Lyra sat alone in the cold radar station. The only sound around her was the soft hum of the machines. It was another long night, like every night. Empty stars outside the window and nothing new on the radar screen. She was young, curious, and often bored with her lonely duty, her hands tapping against the metal desk as she waited for her shift to end. Her people had guarded this station for generations, but no threat had ever come from the stars. Not in her lifetime. Not in her parents' lifetime. The radar was supposed to keep them safe, but it had become little more than a forgotten post. Lyra leaned back in her chair, her violet eyes staring at the blinking green lights. Sometimes, she wondered why she had even accepted this job. Most of her friends were in the city, living bright and noisy lives. And here she was, on the edge of the frozen moon. Guarding the silence of space, she sighed, ready to close her eyes for a moment, when suddenly, beep, beep, beep. Her eyes shot open. The radar screen lit up, showing a signal, faint at first, but clear. Her heart skipped a beat. This was not normal space dust, not a drifting rock. It was a moving object, fast and steady. She leaned closer, her fingers shaking as she adjusted the controls. The shape on the screen became sharper. It was not one of their own ships, not any model she had ever studied. Her breath caught in her throat, the design. It was straight and sharp with wings and engines that did not curve like her people's crafts. For a long moment she simply stared, unable to believe what she was seeing. A word rose in her mind, a word she had only heard in old legends. Humans. Her voice trembled as she whispered into the empty room. No, that's impossible. Humans are myths, they are stories. Her people had always said humans were nothing but shadows of the past, ancient tales told to scare children. They had been described as violent, powerful, dangerous, but also extinct. The elders taught that humans had died out long ago, hunted until no one remained. Yet the signal on her radar did not lie. The object was real, the movement precise, the energy signature strong. Lyra's heart raced faster, her fingers. Tightening on the console, she tried to calm herself, whispering, "Maybe it's a ghost echo, maybe the system is broken, yes, broken." But deep down she knew the truth. The system had never failed before. The blip grew closer. Her eyes widened as she realized it was heading directly toward her moon. Her moon, her home, her people. She felt a wave of fear and wonder wash over her. If this was truly a human ship, then everything she had ever been taught was a lie. And if humans still lived, what did they want here? She stood quickly, running to the communication console. Her fingers danced across the keys, sending the data to her commanders. Her message was clear. Unidentified ship detected. Unknown design. Possible myth-class contact. Her chest rose and fell quickly, her throat dry. Would they believe her or laugh at her? Minutes later, the reply came. Static crackled. Then the voice of her superior filled the room, calm and amused. "Cadet Lyra, the signal you see is nothing more than interference. Do not waste our time with ghost stories. Humans are not real. They are dead. Clear your console and continue your duty." Her hands froze. Her mouth opened slightly as if to argue, but no words came. The message ended, leaving her alone with the blinking green light. She sat back down, her body trembling. She wanted to believe them, wanted to trust their words, but her eyes never left the radar screen. The signal was still there, still moving, still alive, not fading, not breaking apart. It pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and strong, closer and closer and closer. Lyra's skin prickled as she leaned forward again. Her violet eyes reflected the green glow of the console. She bit her lip, whispering to herself, "If they are real, why are they here? Why now?" Her heart refused to calm. Every instinct inside her screamed that this was no mistake, that something ancient and dangerous had returned to the galaxy. Her hands curled into fists on the desk. She could almost feel the ship's presence, as if it was watching her from afar. She thought of the old stories her grandmother once told her. Stories of humans, strange, fierce, unstoppable, beings who could destroy but also protect, legends who rose against empires, monsters to some, saviors to others. But never myths, never just shadows. Lyra shivered in the cold room, her breath fogging in the air. The radar continued to beep, steady, alive. Outside her window, the stars looked darker, the silence heavier. She pressed her forehead to the glass, her whisper breaking in the night. They said you were gone, so why are you coming back now? The signal blinked once more, brighter than before. Her pulse raced with it. Something deep inside her told her that her life had just changed forever, that this night was not the end of her lonely duty, but the beginning of something greater, something dangerous, something unknown. The impossible signal was real, and the truth was about to arrive. Lyra could not sleep that night. She sat in the dim radar room, staring at the blinking green light on the screen. Every few seconds, the signal pulsed, steady and alive. She had reported it to her commanders, and they had dismissed her, but her eyes told her the truth. Something was out there, moving closer, something her people had declared impossible. She leaned back, her hands pressed against her chest. Her heart refused to calm, beating faster than the steady beeping. Her mind echoed with the words of the elders. Humans are gone, erased from the galaxy. Only myths remain. Yet the screen refused to agree. Lyra remembered the laughter in her commander's voice, the way he had called her a child chasing ghost stories. It burned inside her chest. She was not a fool. She was not imagining things her people could ignore it, but she could not because she had seen it. That sharp design, those glowing engines, it was not alien, it was not hers. It was something other, something forbidden. She left the console and walked to the wide glass window. Stars shimmered across the black sky, silent and endless. Her breath fogged the glass as she whispered, "Why did you come here? Why me?" Her people had always taught her that myths were dangerous, that curiosity was dangerous. But she had always been curious. It was why she had accepted this lonely job, to watch the stars, to search for something new. And tonight, she had found it, or maybe it had found her. The next morning, Lyra entered the city with the data stored secretly in her wristband. She approached the council hall, a place where the oldest and wisest of her kind ruled. Inside, tall figures in silver robes sat on thrones of stone, their eyes sharp, their voices cold. She bowed, her hands trembling. "My lords, I saw it with my own eyes. The signal is real, the ship is real, you must believe me." The council chamber filled with low murmurs. One elder stood, his golden eyes burning with anger. "Cadet Lyra, do not spread lies. Humans are dead. They are nothing but shadows in the past. You insult our history with this fantasy." Another, elder calmer but colder, added, "You are young, your mind is eager for stories. Do not mistake echoes for truth. Go back to your duty and forget what you think you saw." Her mouth opened, words fighting to escape. But she saw their faces, closed, proud, unshakable. They would never believe her. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "But I have proof. The data." "Delete it," the first elder commanded. "Erase this nonsense before you embarrass yourself further." Her chest tightened, her fists clenched at her sides, but she bowed once more. "Yes, my lords," she whispered, though inside she screamed. She left the hall, her body shaking. The city outside was loud and alive. Shops glowed with lights. Children laughed in the streets. No one cared about her signal. No one feared the stars. They were safe, they believed, and only she carried the truth. That night, back at the station, Lyra sat again before the radar. The signal was stronger now. The ship was closer. Her people could deny it. Her leaders could silence it. But nothing could stop it from coming. She touched the glass again, her violet eyes filled with fear and wonder. She imagined what a human might look like, tall, strange, powerful. Would their eyes be cruel or kind? Would they destroy her world or save it? She did not know, but her heart whispered that the answer would come soon. She thought of her grandmother's old stories again, whispers told at night, when the elders were not listening. Stories of humans who burned worlds, but also of humans who saved them. Beings who broke chains and freed slaves, creatures who could love, hate, protect, and kill. They were not machines, not lifeless shadows. They were fire. They were storm. Lyra pressed her hands together. Fear filled her, but so did a strange excitement. Her people had grown cold, proud, safe in their silence. But humans were different. Humans were alive. If they truly still existed, then the galaxy was not as empty as they believed. The radar beeped louder, pulling her back. The signal now burned brighter than before. It was close enough to scan more deeply. Her fingers trembled as she activated the sequence. Lines of data filled the screen. Metal structure, engine damage, oxygen inside. And then one final reading that made her breath stop. Life signs. Her throat tightened, her voice nothing but a whisper. They're alive. Her heart thundered against her chest. Fear wrapped around her like ice. If she told the council this, they would destroy the data. If she told the soldiers, they would prepare weapons. If she told no one, she would be the only one who knew, and the humans would come anyway. Lyra sat in silence, her hands over her mouth. She felt the weight of the secret pressing down on her. Every beat of the radar echoed inside her skull. Closer, closer, closer. Her violet eyes filled with tears. She had always wanted to see something new. But now that she had, she wished she hadn't. Because the truth was too heavy for her heart to carry. Yet she could not look away. She could not stop watching the screen. The fear inside her was strong, but so was the fire. Something inside her whispered that she had been chosen. Chosen to see the truth. Chosen to stand at the edge of history. Lyra swallowed hard. Fear burned in her chest, but she whispered to herself, "No one believes me. But that will not change what is coming." And outside, in the endless dark of space, the human ship drifted closer, silent and unstoppable, its shadow growing larger with every moment, its truth waiting to collide with her world. The fear in her heart would not go away, it only grew stronger because she knew. This was only the beginning. Lyra could not stop thinking about the signal. Her commanders had dismissed her, the council had mocked her, but the radar did not lie. The ship was there, moving closer each hour, and inside it, life signs were real. Warm, beating, undeniable. She sat in the cold room, her violet eyes fixed on the blinking screen, the sound of the radar pulsing in rhythm with her own heart. She had promised the elders she would delete the data, but instead, she had hidden it in her wristband. Every time she touched it, she felt like she was holding a secret that could break her world. The next night, she could not hold back her curiosity. The ship was now close enough for her to try, the long-range telescope. Her people rarely used it. There was nothing new to see in the dead sky. But tonight, Lyra powered it up, her fingers shaking as the old machine hummed to life. She turned it toward the coordinates of the signal. Her breath quickened as the screen flickered, and then the ship appeared. Her lips parted in awe. It was not like anything her people built. Her people's ships were curved, graceful, smooth like flowing water. But this one was sharp, brutal, strong. Its hull was scarred with burns and scratches. Its engines glowed a deep orange, sputtering as if they were dying. Pieces of metal drifted away from its sides. Smoke and sparks trailed into the void. It looked broken, yet still alive. A wounded beast limping across the stars. Lyra leaned closer. Her hand pressed against the glass of the viewing screen. She whispered to herself, "It's real. It's really real." For a long time she simply stared, unable to breathe. She wanted to run, to hide, to scream at the city that she had been right, but she could not move. Her body was frozen in both fear and wonder. The ship's design matched the forbidden drawings she had once secretly seen in old banned books, books her grandmother had kept hidden, books that spoke of humans, creatures of fire, war, and will. Her grandmother had told her, "They are dangerous, but never forget. They are also alive in ways we may never be." And now, Lyra was seeing them with her own eyes. She increased the magnification. Her eyes widened as she saw the faint glow of lights inside the broken hull. Shapes moved behind the glass, shadows of tall figures walking slowly. She gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Someone is inside. Her heart thundered. These were not myths, not ghosts, not shadows. They were living beings, walking, breathing, moving. Her throat went dry, her pulse racing faster. She wanted to call someone, anyone, but she knew what would happen. The council would erase the data, the military would send warships, and the humans would be destroyed before she even had the chance to know them. She sat back, her body trembling. She could not let that happen. The telescope feed flickered. For a moment she thought she had lost the image, but then the view steadied, and she saw something that made her blood turn cold. One of the figures had stopped walking, it turned slowly, and through the layers of glass and distance it looked directly at her. Her breath caught in her throat. The shadow's head tilted, slightly as if it knew, as if it could see her watching. Her hands shook as she whispered, "No, no, that's impossible." But she felt it, deep inside her chest. That human had noticed her, not the telescope, not the station, her. The air around her felt heavy, the silence of the room pressing down on her ears. Her violet eyes refused to blink, locked on the screen. The figure stood still for several seconds, then slowly turned away, disappearing back into the shadows of the broken ship. Lyra stumbled back from the console. Her legs felt weak, her chest tight. She pressed her back against the cold wall, gasping. It was impossible. Yet she had felt it. That connection, that moment. Her mind raced. What if they were not coming by accident? What if they had chosen this moon? What if they were seeking her people, seeking her? She shook her head violently. No, I'm imagining things. They don't even know I exist. They're just trying to survive. But even as she whispered the words, her heart refused to believe them. She returned to the telescope, her hands still trembling. The ship was drifting slowly toward the moon's atmosphere, its engines failing. It would not hold much longer. It was going to fall. Her throat tightened. If it crashed, her people would see. They would destroy whatever survived. The elders would make sure of it. But if she reached it first? The thought filled her with both terror and fire. She had never defied the council before, but she could not let this chance slip away. This was history. This was truth. This was the moment she had always dreamed of. She pressed her forehead to the glass again. The stars shimmered coldly above, and in the distance the wounded human ship burned faintly as it limped closer. Lyra whispered to herself, "If you are real, if you are truly here," then everything changes. Her violet eyes glistened in the green glow of the radar. She felt the weight of destiny pressing down on her shoulders, and though her heart was heavy with fear, a spark of something else grew within her. Hope. For the first time, she dared to believe that humans were not just a myth. For the first time, she dared to believe they had returned. And for the first time, she wondered if she was ready to meet them. The ship drifted on, closer and closer. Its shadow stretching across the stars, and Lyra knew. The first glimpse was only the beginning. Lyra barely slept. The image of the human ship burned in her mind. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the shadowed figures moving inside the hull, and she could not forget that moment, when one of them had turned, as if it had looked directly at her, across the stars. The next morning she stood once more in the council chamber. Her voice was urgent, her body trembling. "My lords, I saw them with the telescope. I saw them inside. They are alive. They are real. They are coming." But the council only stared at her with cold, tired eyes. One elder leaned forward, his tone sharp. "You are young, Cadet Lyra, and your imagination runs wild. The telescope can deceive. Shadows can lie. Humans do not exist. Do you understand?" Her chest tightened, her voice rose louder, desperate. "No, I saw them walking, breathing. The ship is damaged, it is falling. If we do nothing, it will crash on our world." The chamber filled with uneasy murmurs. Some younger officials shifted uncomfortably, but the eldest elder slammed his staff against the floor. Silence. We will not waste our energy on fairy tales. Delete the data, cadet. Erase the scans. Erase the images. Forget this madness and return to your duty. Lyra's lips trembled, her fists clenched at her sides. Inside, her heart screamed to fight, to argue, to beg them to believe, but she bowed her head, whispering, "Yes, my lords." She left the chamber with heavy steps. Her body felt cold, her spirit crushed, yet inside her wristband, hidden and safe, the truth remained. Every scan, every image, every heartbeat of the human ship. That night, alone again in the radar station, Lyra sat before the console, her violet eyes burning with defiance. She whispered into the silence, "They can order me to erase the truth, but the truth will not die." The radar beeped steadily. The human ship was now dangerously close, its engines sputtered, its path unstable. If it continued, it would burn through the atmosphere. It would fall onto the frozen wastes beyond the city. Lyra's hands hovered. Over the control, she could send another warning, she could call the military, but she knew what would happen. They would launch warships. They would destroy the humans before they even touched the ground. Her heart pounded against her ribs. She faced the hardest choice of her life: obey her people's orders, or follow her own instincts. She closed her eyes. Her grandmother's stories echoed in her mind. Humans are fire, child. They can burn you, but fire can also bring light in the darkness. When Lyra opened her eyes, they glistened with determination. She pressed a hidden sequence on her wristband. The data encrypted itself, locked where no elder could touch it. And with trembling hands, she whispered, "I will not obey. Not this time." Hours passed. The sky outside the station grew darker, clouds rolling over the moon's surface. The air vibrated faintly. And then it came, the burning streak across the heavens, the human ship, tearing through the atmosphere. Its fire lit the night like a second sun. The ground shook as it roared above the city, before smashing into the frozen wastelands beyond the northern ridge. The entire station trembled. Books fell from shelves. Dust rained from the ceiling. Lyra grabbed the console, her heart racing. Her eyes widened in awe. "They're here!" Alarms blared across the city. Voices shouted through the comms. "Unidentified crash detected. Mobilize all units." Lyra's chest tightened. The military would already be moving. If she waited, the humans would be surrounded. They would be captured, or worse. She could not let that happen. She pulled on her cloak. Her fingers tightened around the wristband holding the data. Her legs carried her out of the station, into the icy night. The cold air bit her skin, but she did not stop. She ran toward the northern ridge, toward the burning glow on the horizon. Each step echoed with the weight of her choice. She had betrayed. The council defied her commanders. If she was caught, she would be exiled or executed, but none of it mattered, not compared to what waited in the wreckage. As she climbed the ridge, the wind howled. Her breath came in sharp gasps. The night sky glowed faintly orange, lit by smoke and fire rising from the crash site. The human ship lay broken across the ice, its sharp metal body half buried in the snow. Sparks and flames crackled from its engines, but it was not silent. Voices echoed faintly from within, strange, deep, alive. Lyra froze, her heart hammering. Her violet eyes widened as she whispered, "They survived." For a moment, fear wrapped around her throat. Should she run back? Should she hide? But her feet refused to move. Her heart pulled her forward step by trembling step. Behind her, in the distance, she could hear the faint roar of warships taking flight. The military was coming. Time was running out. She pressed, her hand to her chest, her voice breaking in the wind. "This is my choice, not theirs. Mine." And with that, Lyra stepped into the shadows of the crash site, toward the humans, toward the truth, toward the unknown future waiting to claim her life. The night sky still glowed faintly orange from the burning trail. Lyra stood on the frozen ridge, the wind tearing at her cloak. Below her, the wreck of the human ship lay scattered across the wasteland. Its broken frame hissed with fire and smoke. metal twisted and glowing red. For a moment, she could only stare. Her people's legends had always painted humans as shadows, but here before her eyes their ship was real, their fire was real. The myth had fallen from the sky and burned a scar into her world. She climbed down the icy slope, each step heavy and uncertain. Her heart pounded, her breath fogged in the freezing air. Closer and closer she moved to the wreck, and then she heard it, a sound that made her blood freeze. Voices, deep, raw, muffled through the broken hull. They were shouting, calling to each other, not in her language but in a strange rhythm, sharp and powerful. Her chest tightened, her throat dry. "They're alive," she whispered. The wreck groaned as flames licked its sides. Metal popped and cracked, echoing in the night. Lyra pressed herself against a jagged piece of broken plating, her violet eyes wide as she peered inside through a torn gap in the hull. Shadows moved within, tall and solid. One figure bent low, dragging another across the floor. Another slammed their hands against the wall, trying to force a hatch open. Even in the flickering light, she could see their forms. Broad shoulders, long limbs, scarred, skin marked by fire. They were nothing like her people, but they were alive, flesh and blood, not ghosts. Her heart raced faster. This was the first glimpse of humanity her world had seen in centuries, and she was the only witness. A sudden explosion split the wreck. Lyra stumbled back as flames burst from the rear of the ship. The figures inside shouted louder. One slammed against the hatch again. This time it broke free and a human stepped out. Lyra's breath caught. The stories had called them monsters, but the man who stood before her was no monster. His face was smeared with ash, his hair dark and wet with sweat. His eyes, deep, sharp, glowing in the firelight, met hers. Her legs weakened beneath her. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then the human shouted something in his strange language. His voice carried not cruelty, but urgency. He pointed to the fire, then back to the wreck. Others were still trapped inside. Lyra's chest tightened. They weren't beasts. They were trying to save their own. She took a trembling step back, but behind her, the faint roar of engines echoed in the night. Her head snapped up. In the sky, distant lights glowed. Warships. Her people were coming. Panic rushed through her veins. If the soldiers found the humans here, they would not ask questions, they would kill them. Erase them. Erase the truth. Lyra's mind raced, her hands shaking. She could turn and run, return to the safety of the city, or she could do the unthinkable, help them. The human man shouted again, his voice desperate, his arm waving her closer. She shook her head, her lips trembling. I can't. But then she saw another shadow stumble from the wreck. A smaller figure, weaker, coughing hard, collapsing into the snow. The man bent to lift them. The fire roared higher, and the warship engines grew louder. Lyra's choice pressed down on her chest like a weight. Her elders' orders echoed in her mind. Erase the truth, erase the humans. But her heart screamed louder. They are alive. They need you. She clenched her fists. Tears stung her eyes. And then, with a trembling breath, she stepped forward. The human's eyes widened as she moved closer. He said something, words she could not understand. But she understood his meaning. He needed her help. Lyra reached for the smaller figure. Her hands slid beneath their arm, lifting their weight against her shoulder. The human man stared for a moment, stunned, then nodded, sharp and quick. Her pulse thundered. She was helping them. She was betraying everything her people had taught her, but in that moment it felt right. The night shook with the rumble of approaching warships. The sky glowed faintly red as their lights drew nearer. Lyra looked up, her chest tightening. They're coming, she whispered. The human followed her gaze, his jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing with determination. He spoke a single word, one she could not understand, but it carried the weight of defiance. Together, They dragged the wounded figure away from the burning wreck. Step by heavy step through the snow, the fire behind them crackled and hissed. The sky above thundered with engines, and the future of her world shifted with every heartbeat. Lyra's breath came in sharp gasps. Fear clawed at her chest, but something else burned there too. Something she had never felt before, the courage to stand against her own people. The crash had not only brought humans back into the galaxy, it had forced Lyra to choose where she truly belonged. And as the snow burned orange in the firelight, she knew the choice was already made. The night was silent except for the hiss of fire and the distant thunder of warships. Lyra's legs shook as she stumbled through the snow, the wounded figure leaning heavily against her shoulder. Beside her, the human man moved with urgent strength, half carrying another injured companion. Their breaths came out in thick white clouds, their bodies glowing in the firelight. Lyra could not believe what she was doing. Her people had ordered her to erase the truth. Yet here she was, dragging that truth through the snow with her own hands. Every step was a betrayal to her. Counsel, but her heart told her it was right. The smaller figure against her shoulder groaned, their voice weak. It was the sound of pain, the sound of life. Lyra's throat tightened. This was no ghost, no myth. This was a living being, flesh and blood, and she was helping them. They reached a patch of ice far from the burning wreck. The human man dropped to one knee, lowering his injured comrade to the ground. Lyra did the same, gently setting the smaller figure down. For the first time, she looked at their face. Pale skin, cut across the cheek, lips dry and cracked. Their eyes fluttered open for a brief moment, and Lyra froze as those eyes met hers. They were blue. Blue like the frozen seas of her moon, bright and piercing even in the dark. The human whispered something weakly, their voice hoarse but soft. Lyra did not understand the words, but the tone was not of hatred. It was a plea, a fragile thread of trust. Her breath caught, her hands trembled as she whispered back, "You're real?" The human man turned toward her then. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. His eyes locked onto hers. For the first time, Lyra saw them clearly. He was tall, his face rough and scarred. His dark hair clung to his skin, wet with sweat and ash. But his eyes, deep, sharp, filled with fire, they held her in place. For a heartbeat, fear gripped her chest. Every story told by her people returned at once. Humans as killers. Humans as destroyers, humans as monsters. She wanted to run, but his gaze stopped her because there was something in those eyes she had never expected. Not cruelty, not hunger for blood, but strength. And something close to kindness. The man spoke, his voice low and steady. "Don't be afraid." The words were broken but clear. Her eyes widened. He spoke her language. Lyra's mouth opened, her voice shaky. You know our tongue?" The man nodded slowly. "Not much, but enough." Her heart raced faster. If they could speak, if they could understand, then they were not just shadows from old stories. They were real people, with voices and thoughts. The man's eyes softened for a moment. He gestured to the others, his voice urgent again. "They need help." Lyra swallowed hard. Her gaze shifted to the injured humans lying in the snow. Blood stained the ice beneath them, their bodies trembling in pain. She felt panic rise inside her. She was no healer, no soldier. What could she do? But then she remembered the warships. She looked to the sky. Their lights were closer now, engines roaring across the horizon. Her chest tightened. If she stayed here, all of them would be found and killed. She turned back to the man. Her voice came out a whisper. "You can't stay here. They're coming." The human's jaw clenched. He looked to the sky, then back to her. His voice was low but steady. "Then we move." Lyra nodded quickly, her breath sharp. "There is a cave. North. Ridge hidden by ice, follow me." The man's eyes studied her for a long moment. Suspicion flickered there, but also something else. trust. Finally, he gave a single sharp nod. Together they lifted the wounded again. Step by heavy step, they pushed through the snow. The night burned red behind them, and the warships roared louder above. As they walked, Lyra's mind swirled. Here she was, side by side with a human, her arm pressed against his as they carried life through the darkness. Every breath reminded her that this was real. Every heartbeat told her she was crossing a line she could never return from. At last, the cave came into sight, a narrow opening. Hidden in the ridge of ice, Lyra slipped inside first. The cold walls swallowed them in shadow. She turned, helping the humans drag the wounded inside. They laid them down on the frozen floor. The firelight from outside faded, replaced by silence and dripping water. The man leaned back against the wall, his chest rising heavily. Lyra sat opposite him, her heart still racing. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, her violet eyes meeting his dark ones. Neither spoke. Finally, Lyra broke the silence, her voice a whisper. "My people said you were myths, that you were dead, that you were gone." The man's eyes darkened. He shook his head slowly. "Not gone, never gone. We survive." Her chest tightened, tears pricked her eyes. The council had lied, the elders had silenced the truth, and now, sitting across from her in the frozen cave, the myth breathed. The human leaned forward slightly. His voice was low, almost gentle. "You helped us." "Why?" Lyra swallowed hard. Her hands trembled in her lap. Her answer came out as a whisper. "Because you were real, and because I could not let you die." The man's eyes softened. For the first time, his lips curved into something almost like a smile. Not cruel, not mocking, but grateful. Lyra's heart fluttered. She had crossed the line. She had looked a human in the eye, and instead of fear, she had found something else, something her people had forgotten. The cave was cold, silent except for the shallow breathing of the wounded humans. Lyra sat against the frozen wall, her cloak wrapped tight around her shoulders. Her violet eyes never left the man sitting across from her, the human whose gaze burned like fire even in the dark. Outside, faint rumbles shook the night sky. The warship circled the crash site. Her people were hunting, searching. It was only a matter of time before they spread to the ridge. Lyra's chest tightened. She had betrayed her council, broken every order. If they found her here with these survivors, she would be condemned. But even as fear clawed at her, another truth pressed harder. She could not regret her choice. The man stirred, his hand brushing the frost on the floor. He looked at her with steady eyes and spoke slowly. His words were broken but clear. "You saved us." Lyra shook her head, her voice trembling. "No, I only delayed their judgment. When they find you, they will kill you. And if they know I helped, they will kill me too." The man's lips pressed into a thin line. He looked at his wounded comrades, then back at her. His voice was deep, carrying a quiet strength. "We have faced worse." Her throat tightened at those words. She leaned forward, her whisper sharp with pain. "Why are you here? Why now? Humans were supposed to be gone." The man's eyes darkened. He stared into the shadows of the cave. For a long moment he was silent. Then he spoke with weight in every word. "Gone? No. Hunted. Scattered. Broken. But never gone." Lyra's breath caught. The myths had always painted humans as extinct. But here he was, telling her that her council had lied, that her people had erased the truth. The man's gaze returned to her. He pointed to his chest, his voice low. "We survive, because we must." He gestured to his injured comrades. To protect, to fight, to live. His eyes locked onto hers. "And now, we need help." Lyra felt her heart twist. The choice before her grew heavier. She could turn them in and save herself, or she could stand with them and betray her entire world. Her grandmother's words echoed again in her mind. Humans are fire, child. Fire burns, but it also gives light. Lyra looked down at her trembling hands. For so long, she had believed she was nothing. A cadet, a nobody, a girl locked in a lonely radar station. But tonight, she was the only bridge between two species, the only one who had seen the truth. The silence broke with the distant roar of engines. Lights flickered outside the cave mouth. The warships were closer now. Search beams crawled across the snow. Panic flared inside her chest. She turned to the human, her voice sharp, urgent. They're here. If they find us, it's over. The man's eyes narrowed. He stood tall and unshaken, even with the cave trembling around him. His voice was steady. Then decide, Lyra. With them or with us. Her breath hitched. The weight of centuries of lies pressed on her shoulders. She saw the faces of the council, their cold eyes. And then she looked at the wounded humans, their pale skin, their trembling bodies, their fire still, burning even in their weakness. She swallowed hard, her whisper breaking. I choose you. The man's eyes widened for a moment. Then he nodded, sharp and firm. A quiet fire lit in his gaze. Not of surprise, but of recognition, as if he had expected this all along. Lyra stood quickly, pulling her cloak tighter. She guided them deeper into the cave, past jagged walls of ice into hidden tunnels her people rarely entered, paths only she knew from lonely nights exploring. The warship's lights swept past the entrance. Their search beams missed. The humans and Lyra were swallowed by the dark. At last, when they paused to breathe, Lyra turned back to the man, her voice steady now, though her body shook. My people will never believe me if I return. They will erase everything. They will call me a liar, a traitor, but I have seen the truth with my own eyes. Humans are real. You are real. The man stepped closer. His shadow fell across her in the dim light. His voice was quiet but powerful. Then carry that truth, Lyra. Because myths only live until someone remembers. Now, you remember. Her eyes glistened. For the first time in her life, she felt not small, not powerless, but part of something greater, something alive. She reached out, her trembling hand brushing against the man's scarred fingers, a bridge between myth and reality, a choice carved in the frozen dark. Outside, the warships roared across the sky. Her people searched the wastelands, blind to the truth hidden beneath their feet. And in the shadows of the cave, Lyra whispered words that sealed her fate. Maybe myths are the only truths we fear to believe. The human's eyes softened for the first time, his lips curved into a true smile, not of victory, not of defiance, but of recognition. That in this frozen moon, in this forgotten cave, they had found not an enemy, but an ally. And so in the silence after the crash, the myth lived again, not in stories, not in warnings, but in the beating hearts of the last humans, and in the violet eyes of the alien girl who chose to stand with them.